Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. I am Rick, and I'm here with Julia Minamata, the designer of the upcoming adventure game, The Crimson Diamond. Hey Julia, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good, Rick. How are you?
Good, good. Good to finally hear you.
Yeah, it's awesome to get a voice to that profile pic.
So, so tell us about The Crimson Diamond. You've been working on this a bit. I played a little bit of a privileged demo that you sent me. And so far it's looking pretty good. Obviously, there's a lot of placeholders, a lot of work in progress, but it's definitely going in the right direction. A lot of playability to it. So it was actually pretty fun what I did play. Tell us a little bit about the game.
Cool. I'm glad you liked it. Well, I've been working on the game for about 4 years, I think. In fact, I haven't even been keeping track, but whenever I post something new, occasionally someone will say, "Hey, I noticed you've been working on this for the past 4 years," and I'll say to myself, "Oh my gosh, it's been 4 years." So, yeah, so on and off really. And because it's sort of my first go around with making a game, I was sort of going in all kinds of directions with it and trying to figure out how to make stuff and how to do all this stuff. And so I've really directed myself into making that demo for the past, maybe a year or so. I mean, with all the assets, yeah, with all the assets I had
Hmm.
generated up until that point.
And were
Yeah.
you like, are you a designer? Like, did you have experience making a game before?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact,
Really?
no, 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 no. What happened was I'm an illustrator, and what happened was this was completely all by accident. Actually, this was just a complete fluke that I started this because I had seen an article on the interwebs about it was called something really clickbaity and angersome, and it was called "You've been doing your line art all wrong in Photoshop."
Okay.
and and okay, so for me, okay, so I've been working in Photoshop for at that point that I seen that for maybe 10 years, I guess,
Right.
every day of my life, basically ever since college. And so I'm thinking, no, there's no way, this is ridiculous, right? So of course I click on it, I read it, and oh, so I have been just a little bit doing it a little bit wrong.
So they made
Well,
some pretty good points.
they made some great points, and I going forward, I do my stuff how this person said to do it. And the thing about it was there's a brush tool in Photoshop.
That's right.
It's a brush tool I use all the time. People are very familiar with the brush tool in Photoshop. But unbeknownst to me, for using the thing for 10 years every day of my life, was there's something called a pencil tool. You know this?
Um, I do recall seeing a pencil icon, but I usually mostly just I'm a Photoshop cut and paster, so I don't really do a whole lot of creating.
Okay, well, the pencil tool, this is very important. The pencil tool is a non-aliased, no anti-aliasing on this brush. So
Right.
what that means is the actual paintbrush, it's an aliased brush. So what that means when you zoom in really close to it, you can see kind of a blurriness where it's smoothing, turns and corners out, so it looks really nice,
Yeah, that's right.
from far away. But up close, it just looks like a mess, blurry mess. But with the pencil tool, it does just complete sharp 90-degree angle lines when you really get in there close and look at it. So yeah, and so
Like pixels basically.
yeah, basically exactly pixels. So what I realized is when I was setting up my illustration work, I'd color it digitally, and it looked fine when you print it and all that. But if you use sort of that anti-alias line when you're generating art, it can look blurry
Oh,
if it's too low res. I mean, I never really ran up against that problem, but they were saying you should use the pencil tool when you have your lines that you're going to be then coloring because it will look nice and sharp. And the kind of art that I do is not really painterly, so you don't want that smoothing.
right.
So when I started doing that, the lines would stay nice and crisp, and you know what you're getting. So when I saw it zoomed in. I saw the blockiness, and I thought to myself, hey, that does look pixely kind of. And so I opened up a new document that was 320 by 200 pixels, which is the aspect ratio of those old Sierra games. And I
That's right.
started playing around. Yeah, I started playing around with it, and I thought, oh, because I've always liked that pixel art, but I never really knew how to create it for myself. I thought I needed something completely different. But when I found that pencil tool, I realized, hey, I can actually do this myself. Yeah, so I started making little character portraits and things like that. And it sort of grew from that, where I wanted to make a room. So okay, well, I want to make a room, so I'm gonna look at Colonel's Bequest and I'm gonna see what how to make a room with with that. I started making one room, and then I made another room, and then I thought it'd be cool if I could connect those rooms and make a little character walk around.
Hmm.
And that kind of led me to Adventure Game Studio, and then that's kind of how I got started.
Okay, and you've been pretty. You've also therefore taught yourself how to use Adventure Game Studio.
Yeah, yeah. So what I found is, first of all, there I found some YouTube tutorials. So there's
Hmm.
a guy called Densming. I don't know, Densming. He has about a 40-part series on how to sort of make a starter adventure game in Adventure Game Studio, and that was super helpful. And I just sort of followed along with that. And it's because it's made for adventure games, it already has, it's all set up by rooms and characters and sprites and everything. So it had an architecture that I could kind of draw from, and I could understand what I was making when I was making. Because you think of those other Unity or whatever other kinds of engines people use, and it's very open, obviously, and that's a great thing when you're making just about anything. But when I'm making an adventure game, I wanted something very specific, and I wanted something where I wouldn't have to worry about, I don't know how to program a save game function,
Hmm.
because I still don't know how to do that. But this thing has all that baked in, which is super helpful. And let me sort of concentrate on doing the artwork and light programming.
Yeah, that's really cool. That it's actually um, intuitive enough that it comes with a lot of that sort of built into it.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Having played a little bit of the game, it's very obviously very inspired by the Colonel's Bequest and the Laura Bow games.
Mhm.
What made you choose the Colonel's Bequest to kind of I guess model after? Is that would that
Mhm.
be correct to say it's modeled after?
Oh yeah, I modeled after, inspired by, very strongly by.
Hmm.
Uh, Partly it was, I loved the art in the Colonel's Bequest. The most, to me, the most beautiful EGA art that Sierra ever made. Douglas Herring made the art for it. I think at least most of it, if not all of it. And the light and shadow in that game, the way that dusk is portrayed outside in the plantation grounds,
Yeah.
I just can look at that stuff. The dithering and everything was so beautiful, and just the type of art that it was too. It was an old, creepy house with the furniture and everything. It kind of looks like a bit of a dollhouse type of look, and so that kind of really inspired me to go with that as well. It's a text parser adventure game. I don't know if we mentioned that yet, but I'm
No,
making a
no, I
text.
didn't. I took that for granted and didn't inform anybody who's listening. But yeah, it's very much yeah, it is very or modeled after the Colonel's Bequest down to the text parser.
Yes, yes, and the text parser. Uh, I wanted to do it because I do feel that that type of interface is just more immersive. I don't know why for me that it is. It kind of gives the illusion you can do anything. You can't, obviously, but it gives me the illusion, and I think other people also have that same feeling. And for me, with those types of detective mystery games, when you're asking people questions, you don't want to have a menu of things to ask necessarily. I feel like there's a process in discovering the right things to ask people and
Hmm.
finding new information. And I feel that it's lost in a dialogue tree or dialogue selections. And so I wanted that investigative aspect to it. And I feel generally adventure games are very much like you're being a detective, even if you're playing a King's Quest type of game, where you're
Right.
trying to understand what's going on and trying to solve problems and and all that. So I feel like that mechanically it works as a mystery game, and I also just wanted to kind of make a mystery game
All right.
because of the
Cool.
Colonel's Bequest. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've never really been on any one particular side between parser and point and click, but I do agree and definitely see the point that for something like a detective game, something very investigative, that format would really lend itself to a parser a lot better than a point and click because you kind of have to investigate. You have to really, you have to earn every clue that you
Mm-hmm.
get rather than just click around the screen. So I do agree. That is definitely probably a much better immersive format for a detective story.
Yeah, and I do understand that it's a bit of a learning curve, and it is tough to use, which is another reason I kind of like the way Colonel's Bequest did it, because it's not necessarily a tough game. It doesn't have impossible puzzles really.
That's
You can
right.
bungle your way all the way through to the end, and I want that to be the same type of design for my game, where I want you to be able to bungle your way through the end, see the story and the characters and what happens, but the ending that you get will be dictated on how well you understand those characters and what actually went on.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I said like before, I'm not good at these games. I was never good at these adventure games. So I didn't want to make a game that was hard to play.
Right. Yeah.
So especially with the text parser, I understand text parser is a tricky beast, and it takes a lot to even just get through and open a door or ask someone about something. So that part too.
The thing that amazes me about this is not so much the user experience of a text parser game, so much as you as the designer making a text parser game, because you have to program all these various different options and ways to say the same thing, and what are people going to be looking at, what are people going to try to interact with. You have to supply the dictionary and the
Hmm.
and the vocabulary that you expect people are going to use, that people are going to try to use, and that's, uh, if anything, I would imagine that's kind of why point and click really became the chosen interface, because the designers wouldn't have to deal with all that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when I look back at how the old King's Quest and Space Quest text parser games are designed, and there are videos where this guy talks about how they designed those games. It is, I could never do what they did back in those days with their limited resources. There's only because I have Adventure Game Studio I can actually make a text parser game that is playable, because they were doing indexing of dictionaries and words and numbers, and it's just like alchemy and wizardry and magic
Mm-hmm.
to me. So the parser, I don't know if you noticed this. I didn't want to tell when I sent you the beta for this. I didn't want to tell you too much about the features that were in the game, because I kind of wanted to see what you would kind of figure out on your own and what you would use and not use. But there is. Did you see the activity log and the parser log?
Um, I saw that they were options or features rather.
Hmm.
I did not really play around too much with them. Yet you have to realize that I am a huge fan of Colonel's Bequest, but I sucked really bad at it because I am the worst at figuring things out. Like I got almost the lowest score possible without being actively bad at that game. So I mean, I went through the entire game the first time without ever using the monocle as a magnifying glass and just wondering when this thing was ever going to come in handy later. And it never happened. And the game was like, you
Apparently.
could have used that monocle
Yeah.
to actually like learn about what's going on. So no, I my detective skills are horrible even into game features. I saw that those
Right.
things were there, but I was sort of like, I'd rather see how I can take a shower.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And you spent about 5 hours in the bathroom, apparently, which I did clean up, by the way. I spent the last few days getting the bathroom all ready for you, and Spacebar now gives you the whatever you last entered into the parser,
Oh, excellent.
not just the F3, the Spacebar. So yeah,
Yeah.
I've been including that. But so the activity log and the parser log, what those do, if you do turn them on, is it will track what you enter into the parser. And
Right.
so if my hope is that people can send me that log, and they can open it up in clipboard or whatever, or notepad, and they can see what is in there, and it's just everything you enter into the parser that is not recognized by the parser. That's what
Oh.
the parse log is. So in case people are trying to find words for things, I'll see what they attempted and didn't work. And the
Mm-hmm.
activity log is more like a kind of general overview of it when they enter different rooms, or when they save the game or load the game or quit. All that, so I get sort of a picture, hopefully, of how people are playing it and where, what words they need to add, or and things like that. But the thing with finding the right word in the text parser is I'm trying to, when I'm writing it, I want, when you look at a room or you look at something, it should hopefully supply you with the proper words to use in the parser too.
Right. Because I think I've seen that somewhere. Somebody was at a Cascade Quest did that, where you could actually, as you were typing in words, it was giving you recommendations.
Yeah, well, the snail track ones for sure. Phil Fortier has the snail track games with a predictive text parser, which I couldn't even begin to program, because Phil can do all kinds of magic on the computer. He's a real good programmer. And that one is one where you start typing and it sort of auto completes almost,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
which is super cool. But
Hmm.
I can't even attempt.
I did play a little bit of Snail Track. I think that's actually where I came across that, but it's more clear. It was more recent in my head watching the Cascade Quest trailer and seeing it from there. I think as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
I actually kind of forgot that was a feature in Snail Track, but yeah, that's such a really good way to solve the problem that a lot of people had with the parser interface.
Hmm.
So you've been working on this for 4 years now,
Yes.
and that's because you started from scratch, like literally knowing nothing going in.
Yes.
So do you find that your progress is working is a lot faster now? Like, do you find that you can do? Do you have a timeline, like an estimate of how much more you would need before this is getting close to ready?
I like to tell myself I'm getting faster at it. I
Hmm.
I have a feeling like I am because the thing is when I got started, I basically have all the art for the exterior of the lodge and the interior of the lodge. I had to program opening doors, closing doors, turning on the faucet, turning off the faucet, making sure all of that works.
Hmm.
And now that that's all set, I'm hoping now as I do the story and what the characters are doing and where they are, that'll not take me as long. And because I've learned so much in the process, hopefully I won't get stuck on certain things.
Right.
That's the hope. So my hope was I realized I needed to have sort of a prototype template, which is what the demo is, of what the game is and how it's built. And once
Hmm.
I have that, I can go on from that. And hopefully, everything is already built for me, and I can just script things as I need to script them.
Hmm.
So there's no timeline. I wish there was a timeline. There's no timeline. I'm hoping maybe this time next year. I'm hoping to have other sections because really, I'm kind of thinking of it in sections. I don't know if I'll build it that way, but the game will have day and night cycle like the old Quest for Glory games.
Right. Oh, really?
So yeah, so I've written out the whole story of
Hmm.
what happens and when it happens, uh, day night alternating. And so when I think about how I'm scripting it, I feel like scripting it section at a time with just placeholder stuff and then just adding all the assets in later.
Hmm.
So I don't have a clue how long that's going to take because, like I said, just creating the demo had a lot to do with creating all that stuff that hopefully I only need to do once,
Yeah.
doors and everything like that. So I don't have an idea. I feel like the second segment of the game that I build, the one after the demo, will be the one where I'll know how long it will take me to complete a segment
Right. Uh,
because
and
then I'll have
and
everything in place. Yeah.
and as far as I know, it's just you doing this, all of it. It's
Yes.
you're the
Yes.
one single person who's doing everything.
Yes, and I love it. I love it that way because I don't have to give myself excuses or I can't give myself stick for saying, I want you to redo that art for the fifth time or this didn't fit, so I need you to do something else. I would hate to do that to anybody else besides myself.
Right. Especially if they would basically be working volunteer at this
Yes,
point.
exactly.
So you
Exactly.
never really want to ride anyone too hard when they're kind of like
No.
giving you their time. Um,
Yeah, I would feel really bad. I would feel so bad if I was going to do that to anybody.
mhm. And so, and of course, the demo I played had music in it.
Yes,
Is that also a feature of Adventure Game Studio?
that is not. So what that is there is something online called the Great Canadian Tune Book.
Oh,
And it's about 50 midis that's this guy orchestrated of old Canadian folk songs, and it's so cute. It's
yeah.
adorable. And so the guy's site, it said that you can use these if you just give me credit.
Okay.
These MIDI files.
Right.
So the songs that you hear in the game are Canadian. I don't know. Did you guys ever learn Canadian folk tales in school at all? I mean, folk songs.
Um, as a Canadian, I learned just the very basics. So, Frere Jacques,
Mm-hmm.
Alouette. I guess Saturday morning cartoons taught me the Log Driver's Waltz.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think I really have any real knowledge of what Canadian folk songs are.
We didn't actually mention we're both Canadian. I don't think either.
I don't know. No, we didn't. We are definitely both Canadian. I always forget that there will be people listening to this who don't know us, or I hope, anyways. I hope there will be
Oh
people
yeah,
listening
yeah,
to this
yeah,
who don't know
yeah,
us. But I do tend to forget to predict that.
yeah. We're both Canadian. We're both Canadian. I'm Ontario. You're BC, I guess.
That's correct. Yeah.
Something like
Were
that.
you born and raised in Ontario?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Okay.
So in our school, we had these. Each province has a folk song. I don't know if you know this. You probably don't know
I
this.
absolutely did not know that.
There's so few. I don't know if it's just an Ontario thing they did this, but I mean they taught us. So for every province of the country, there is a song, and I love those old folk songs. And when I found the Great Canadian Tune Book online, I saw a lot of those songs that I remembered from middle school, and a bunch I had never even heard before. So I wanted to use those. I mean, the thing is I'm not a musician.
Hmm.
I mean, people have offered, their musicianship skills to me for it, but I kind of, again, I felt awkward about it because this is not paid. This
Yeah.
is completely, I didn't want to do that to anybody. And I also, I, it's cool to do it by yourself because yeah, I make my own schedule. No one's asking me really when is this going to get done, when's that going to get done. I don't have to depend on anyone else. I tend to like that. I like working alone.
Hmm.
So just the idea that there was already ready made this great library of songs that I'm hopefully free to use. I think the guy should be okay with it. Um, he said he was. He said he was online.
Yeah,
Uh,
there you go.
I thought, hey, this is already here for me and it's perfect. So I kind of went with it.
Oh, great. Yeah, because I do remember the music was really quite cool. I did like that a lot. And yeah, I was kind of thinking to myself, I was actually wondering what program you might have used to create that or anything like that. But it's just a site that you can just find this all on, hey?
Yeah. Oh well, actually, there's a couple things that I did do myself. You can probably tell that I made them because they're horrible. The the death sound, the death music was something I just, it's obviously derived from something that exists already, but
Right.
it's the rhythm is all off on it. So I did find I did find a program that I can sort of make my own little tunes, but it's really bad. Uh, you'll notice
I
as they come. Yeah.
I did die once. I found one death so far.
Yes. Yes.
And I will be honest, I do not really recall what the death sounded like, but I remember not. I didn't notice it was bad, so I'm going to say it was at the very least not bad.
It was at the very least forgettable, and
Yeah, at
that's
the very least.
which is a high compliment for someone who is so not a musician. Actually, I also made the sounds for the opening and closing of the doors and the opening and closing of the cabinets.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, very, very, very high level stuff.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating that this is all stuff that you're just learning on your own. I
It's
could
awesome.
never do anything like
Don't
that.
say that. Don't
No, I
say
mean,
that. Of course you could.
no, I mean, sure, technically, I have the capacity to do that. I would just, I can't imagine myself applying myself that much to doing something like
Well,
that.
it
I,
kind of gets addictive, actually,
yeah,
when
I
you're
can see
figuring
that.
something out. Because you're figuring something out, and you'll be doing it days, and it'll be frustrating. And then when you get it to work,
Mm,
it's this amazing feeling, this amazing high, I guess. And I just love experiencing that, and also saying, you feel really smart. So I kind of like that
yeah,
feeling too.
like
Yeah.
I still only use Photoshop for copying and pasting, and even then, I'm not that great at it. So I really just use it to download images and then put a caption over it. Yeah, I make memes with Photoshop. That's the extent of my capacity.
That's pretty good still. I think they have. I think don't they have some online meme generators? I'm assuming
Yeah, yeah, they do that too. If I don't have Photoshop, I will use one of those.
in a
Um,
pinch.
and so of course I've a lot of people, probably most of the people who are listening to this episode are familiar with a lot of the screenshots that you've posted of this game,
Mhm.
which I'm you've been receiving them, so I'm sure you're aware of like the high compliments that people feel about your work, because it is really quite amazing. Like I believe I've told you in the past that when I saw it, I actually thought that you were working with assets from actual SCI
Mhm.
EGA games, and they're not. They're these are things that you created from scratch entirely yourself. So this
Yes.
obviously comes from your background as an illustrator.
Mhm.
And how long have you been an illustrator?
Let's see. Since I graduated from college, I would say 10 years, just about 10 years being an
Hmm.
illustrator. Yeah. Because you're Canadian, you'll probably be familiar with some of the publications. So
Right.
there is National Post.
Yeah.
I've worked with them 3 or 4 times. Today's Parent, a few times. Let's see. Maclean's, I worked for a lot before they stopped using illustration.
Oh.
Yeah, it was sad. I worked for them about once a month for maybe about 7 or 8 years.
Oh wow. That's
So it
great.
was great. It was great, and actually, that was a super nice gig to have.
And I think
But no,
you mentioned once, you actually showed once that one of your pieces got into Breaking Bad.
yeah, 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 yeah.
How
That
did
was
that
funny.
happen?
It was ridiculous. So I would never have known if I didn't actually watch Breaking Bad. So That was an alt news weekly. It's not, you know, all those little alt news weeklies. Well, they're not around quite as much anymore. But uh, did you have Georgia Strait in Vancouver, or is that a Seattle
Yes,
thing?
no, we definitely have Georgia Strait here.
Okay, I did a cover for them once.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, it was a bunch of shrimp. Anyway, so anyway, alt news weeklies. I used to do quite a bit of that until they started kind of leveling off and cutting their budgets. But that one was for an alt news weekly called Alibi, based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And it just so happened, I would do covers for them or whatever, and I was just watching Breaking Bad on Netflix, and season 4, episode 1, I think it was. I was like 4 o'clock in the morning. Don't even ask. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I saw the episode. And I'm like, yeah, I don't. It was one of those shocks, really. My boyfriend was asleep, and I just I actually nudged him and I told him, and I don't think it registered whatsoever.
Right.
But
Okay,
I screamed.
so they just like had a publication that had your work and they just threw it in there as a prop.
Yeah, it was just set dressing. It was not
Yeah.
huge, but the thing is, it held on it for a few seconds because it was right beside something that was really important and key in the scene.
Yeah.
So you saw it for a few seconds, and actually, what's funny is they actually digitally retouched the cover.
Oh.
So someone actually had to go and fix it because it said on the cover, I think 2013 predictions or something like that. So they changed the words on the cover to say something that didn't give a year.
Oh wow.
So I thought, oh my gosh, someone actually had to do something there. That's pretty cool.
That's so you didn't even know about it until you actually saw it on
No,
the screen.
no, I
So they
did
probably
not.
didn't pay you for that.
Of course not. Of
Oh,
course not.
darn.
It's cool though. It's all good. It's all good. I'm just happy that I'd like to think that I'm now a part of the Breaking Bad cinematic universe. And if I ever go to Albuquerque, or I can, I can run into Saul Goodman at one point. Who knows? I get that
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah, no, exactly. They'll Breaking Bad is such a great show, and
Mm.
a lot of it is their attention to detail. So it wouldn't surprise me if they'll be like, they'll have a subplot somewhere in Better Call Saul where the artist of that magazine,
Uh-huh.
somehow long foreshadowed the events of what was going to happen 2 seasons later or something like that.
Because it did say predictions on the cover after all.
Right?
I
Yeah,
gotta
there you
get,
go.
I gotta get to watching that actually because I really love Bob Odenkirk. So.
Oh, it's a
Yeah.
great show. Um, so you So I can't remember if you alluded to it earlier, if you just told me before in passing, that the Colonel's Bequest is kind of one of your favorite games for its art alone, but not so much. You yourself didn't play it quite as extensively or intensively as
Mhm.
some other games. What kind of games do you play? Like, what are some of your favorites?
Well, probably the games I played the most. Well, first of all, I mean, without any contest, would be World of Warcraft.
Right.
Absolutely no contest there. But I mean, if it was not an MMORPG, it would have to be probably another role playing game, just offline role playing game. But I played WoW for years, years. I
Hmm.
actually met a few really nice people in real life too. So it was really cool to get that happening. We had a guild and everything. It was awesome. But for single player games, it'd probably be like Wizardry 7 or something. I played quite a bit of that.
Oh, nice.
Come to think of it, yeah,
Is
you know
that
what?
the
Because
is that Dark Savant?
yes, Crusaders of the
Oh,
Dark Savant.
okay.
Yes,
I
I
owned
did.
that for a little bit, but unfortunately, I got into that just a little bit after I found the static screens was kind of not fun anymore.
I see.
So I did play a little bit of Wizardry 8. And I think that's sort of like the one that kind of ages a little bit better in 2018. But man, I wish I still. I regret it because as a result, I just like pretty much immediately traded it away, traded the big box of Wizardry 6 and 7 away, and man, I really should have kept those because those were awesome, and I just but
They were awesome. The thing is yeah, the adventure games were tougher for me than those RPG games. The
mm-hmm,
RPGs tend to be more straightforward. So I did play quite a lot of that. Well, a lot of adventure games, Day of the Tentacle, Monkey Island, that type of thing. Played
mm-hmm.
quite a bit of that too. But just arcade games. I used to play Lode Runner a lot. The old CGA Lode Runner.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, just the simpler games, California games, Winter games, all those old Epics games.
Yeah. Uh,
Pinball, I don't know, just about everything. Yeah.
and how about now? What do you like? What are you playing now? What's your current favorite, or at least current taking up your time?
Well, right now, actually, I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's called West of Loathing. Have you heard of
No,
this?
I don't think. I mean, I think that almost sounds familiar, but not really.
So what it is it's sort of a role-playing game with it's basically a role-playing game with stick figures and very, very basic black and white line drawing.
Okay.
And its strength is its
Wait, is it
humor and its
only in black
writing.
and white?
Yes,
Oh,
just
okay.
line. It's awesome because it reminds me of those old games where the graphics are not elaborate. I wouldn't even say they're not strong. They are strong, but they're just not elaborate. And so what that means is you can spend more time on the funny writing and the little stories and things
That's
like that,
right.
which is what I tend to favor more anyway.
Of course.
So yeah, so it's one of those games where you kind of want you're an old west cowpoke and you're kind of wandering around and righting wrongs and doing whatever you please really. And it's a lot of fun and it's super lightweight. I'm actually playing a lot of games on my Surface Pro 2 right now, so I can't do anything too crazy.
Right.
So there's that. There's Stardew Valley, which entering into my third spring, which is when Grandpa comes back, and I'm just scared. I put that game down for maybe it's been 2 or 3 weeks now because everyone reassures me that when Grandpa comes back, it's really cool, but I feel like he's gonna judge me. I know that he's not, but I kind of is that I know that's weird, but I feel that way about him a little bit. So. I've kind of put that down and I've started in this West of Loathing game, which I picked up. They had something called Kingdom of Loathing, which is sort of a browser game. You can just log in and play it, and I quite like that. It was free, and when they had a sale on it recently because it was the 1 year anniversary for West of Loathing, and I picked it up, and it's super great, super lightweight. The story is wonderful and adorable. I find that if the graphics are too elaborate, I just kind of turn off. It's too much for me, really, which is why I tend to favor those classic retro looking games. If not a real retro game, something that looks like it was or could have been.
Yeah, no, for sure. And this is a really good time for that right now. There's a lot of really good independent games that are coming out that are very, very inspired by the classics, and try their best to really recapture the experience of the old Sierra games, the old LucasArts games, and such like that. So how did you uh, how did you like the Dagger of Amun Ra?
Actually, I have the big box of Dagger Monroe, I think, somewhere. I like it. I mean, I think it's a cool. I mean, Robert Williams didn't do Dagger Monroe, but it is a cool game, and it has a lot of the same mechanics that Colonel's Bequest had. And I
Mm-hmm.
love the setting. I love the time period. I love the art in it. I think it's beautiful. I mean, it was based on some old Art Deco illustrator back in the day, with Landecker. And what's his name? I can't remember his name. His last name was Landecker. Anyway, and
Mm-hmm.
it's gorgeous. It's beautiful, and the design that they took with it was really really nice. So no, I
Mm-hmm.
love it. I think it's a beautiful game, and I can see why people count it among their favorites.
Yeah, no, for sure. It really has a very different feel, and I don't think it's entirely just the EGA VGA thing. It just there's something about it that really kind of which is cool because you don't really want every single game to feel like you're playing the same game. And this is one you really felt very different from the Colonel's Bequest. So do you have a lot of illustration work these days?
Not really. I mean, I think I'm primarily an editorial illustrator, which means newspaper and magazines is what I like to work for, and
Mm-hmm.
it tends to be easier to find work in those fields because usually it's a low risk type of endeavor because it's on the newsstand, it's off the newsstand. It's around
Right,
for a week or a month and then it's gone. So they don't feel like it's a high level of commitment, and so they don't pay you a lot and it's not around a lot, so they feel like they can take a chance on somebody.
right.
Stuff like books and advertising stuff, that is the long haul stuff, which is the big bucks and the big commitments. So it's harder to get that kind of stuff, really. Unfortunately, I mean, I'm sure everyone's noticed, the state of newspapers and magazines nowadays,
Yeah,
where the ad revenue is just, it's going down, and those magazines are getting skinnier and skinnier, really.
yeah,
So
that's right.
budgets are going down, art departments are getting cut, that type of thing. So it's which is what happened to Maclean's, really, I think, because they don't they used to be a weekly publication, and now they are a monthly publication. Well, they have digital editions that come out every week, but they only have a physical publication every month, and then they still don't do illustration for that monthly one. So
Oh, right. So they don't
so
do any
it's
at all anymore.
It doesn't seem like it. No, I don't think so. And also, like I said before, all those alt news weeklies, they have been kind of shriveling up and dying too.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the work that I used to do is just not around anymore,
Right.
unfortunately. So that's
So
why, it's another reason why the game is something I want to really get myself into.
yeah. So does that so you probably use all that most of that time goes into spending with the game then?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, sometimes I'll get stuck for days trying to figure something out, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not been like that as much anymore right now. So right now I've just been retooling some of the artwork, and then I have to get started on the next segment of the game, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Because
I mean, it's picked up because I used to be busier, so it's a good thing and a bad thing.
um, but yeah, I mean, I think that's about all the time we have for now. But is there anything you'd like to close off on? Is there anything you'd like to shout out just before we sign out?
Ooh, not off the top of my head. I just want to say thanks for having me. This was awesome. I was a little well, I was pretty nervous coming into it, but it was nice. I was wondering what the rapport would be like because we'd
Mm-hmm.
never spoken really before this. But it was awesome. I had a really good time. Hope we can do it again. I don't know what we're going to talk about though because we covered everything.
Oh
Anyway, but it
well,
was fun. It was
yeah.
fun.
Oh, don't worry. You will definitely, we will definitely be keeping in touch for sure. Uh, so I guess that's it for today. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in and join us. Well, to be honest, I'm not sure if this is going to be weekly or bi-weekly just yet, but we will definitely let you know when the next episode is up and who will be on that show. So thanks to everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.